expect your crummy webs to stop me?
The thought had crossed my mind.
Yes! Good move! Excellent!
Welcome, true believers, to Spider-Blood, a YouTube retrospective of the classic 1994 Spider-Man the Animated Series. My name is Hack, the moronic and beautiful comic book guy of the hacjacshow. And for this iteration of the retrospective, I will be covering the 6th episode of the series, marking the animated debut of Spider-Man's eternal jobber, the Scorpion. But more importantly, this episode marks an astounding revelation about one of Spider-Man's greatest foes, a revelation so astounding that it changed my entire perspective and adoration for the animated series. Before I go into the meat and potatoes of this revelation, let's set the stage for today's episode. Our story begins upon a familiar scene. Peter Parker is bringing Felicia Hardy home after a long day of studying. He is once again attempting to ask out Felicia for a romantic dinner. She shoots him down without hesitation and tells Peter,
I have enough men asking me out, but a good tutor, that's hard to find.
Just before Peter can simp some more, his spider sense activates. And like any good man who's berated by a woman he's not dating, leaves her behind. Having transformed to his heroic attire, he leaps into higher ground to broaden his search for who or what set his spider sense. Immediately, he notices a disheveled man running toward the dark alley, but just as Spider-Man prepares to follow the mysterious stranger, a sudden explosion occurs. Armed men come charging out of the debris carrying their stolen goods. Spider-Man intercepts and quickly dismantles the criminals. The next morning, Peter checks in at the offices of the Daily Bugle until he's accosted by J. Jonah Jameson. Being the skeptic he always is and will be, Jameson interrogates Peter's uncanny ability to shoot amazing pictures of Spider-Man. Nervously, Peter fumbles through Jonah's onslaught of questions, which only raises Jameson's suspicions even more. After submitting his photos and preparing to leave the office, Peter spots him, the mysterious stranger from last night, and he is entering Jameson's office. Swiftly, Peter transforms into Spider-Man and eavesdrops on their conversation.
Yeah, and I can see why. Parker must know Spider-Man. That has to be how he gets those photos. How hard can it be to follow him to Spider-Man's hideout?
It is here we learn that J. Jonah Jameson hired this strange man, now revealed as Mac Gargan, to tell Peter in order to find out how exactly he gets his amazing pictures. Furious about Jonah's treachery, Spider-Man crashes into Jameson's office, webs up Mac Gargan, and coldly warns Jonah to back off or else there will be consequences. Shocked and irate, Jameson forms a new plan with Gargan, a plan to take out Spider-Man for good. Season 1, Episode 6, The Sting of the Scorpion continues the Villain of the Week formula, and much like the previous 2 episodes of the season, also provides an origin for our arachnid adversary. Mac Gargan is portrayed as a dullard and pushover, which makes his transformation to the powerful Scorpion thematically appropriate for a villain who was no threat to Spider-Man. It is also in this episode we get a glimpse of a more enraged Peter. While Parker is more famous for his snarky attitude and kind-hearted nature, he has an aggressive and dangerous side to him,
Gonna cry?
which he foolishly showcases during his confrontation with Jonah. In terms of storytelling, this is the best scene in the episode. It shows how Peter's readiness to put Jonah in his place backfires tremendously, unknowingly igniting the chain of events that leads to his bout with Scorpion. In one scene, we get a moment that kicks the story into high gear and witness the greatest revelation about Spider-Man's greatest foe. A man who's been a thorn by his side before Green Goblin ever threw his first pumpkin bomb, before Dr. Octopus ever crushed him with his indestructible tentacles, and before Joe Quesada So Peter's marriage to the devil, there was J. Jonah Jameson. During Spider-Man's tirade against Jonah in his office, a traumatic memory is triggered in Jameson's mind.
I'm in a good mood. As for you, prune face, get off my case. You hear?
I'm warning you, Jameson. Get off my case, or else.
It is here the viewer learns the origin of Jameson's hatred of masked men, and the sad realization that John Jonah Jameson is a widower. This paints Jonah in a new light. Like many of you, I was introduced to Jonah as just a loudmouth jerk who was prejudiced against Spider-Man because he believed he is dangerous and above the law. But now, I see a hurt man who lost the love of his life to a mass killer and seeks justice against these cowardly criminals. When you think about it, Spider-Man and Jonah are two sides of the same coin. Both are men who lost a loved one due to crime and used their status and abilities to fight for justice. Jonah with the pen as editor-in-chief, and Peter with his powers as a superhero. This moment perfectly presents excellent storytelling. This show may be targeted towards children, but observant viewers can catch these instances of creativity perfectly blending the fantasy of the superhero with believable and relatable characters. I greatly enjoyed watching this episode. It has the ideal mix of superhero action and character drama that makes the show memorable, exciting, and able to overcome its own flaws. Which leads to my next point. This episode barely has any flaws. We still have one animation foible with Spidey's left arm disappearing in one shot, and for those who are extremely observant, recycled animations are sprinkled throughout the episode. But recycling animations are not inherently flawed, because every animated show or movie uses recycled animations. Rather, it's how they are implemented that is flawed. The only thing that keeps this episode from being the best, besides the fact there are 4 more seasons of the show, is the fact that because of its air date and place in the season, the episode muddles the continuity. Season 1 episode 5 has Peter pining after Mary Jane, and then suddenly he's back to trying to woo Felicia in this episode. One could argue that Peter is doing his best to court either woman, but there is a scene in this episode in which Peter calls Aunt May to chat, and she directly mentions Mary Jane coming over for lunch.
Really, Aunt May, everything's okay. I just won't be home for lunch.
But Peter, I've invited Anna Watson's niece, Mary Jane.
Oh, right. I'm sorry, I forgot. I can't make it home right now. The traffic, it's terrible. In fact, it's really crawling.
Uncharacteristically, Peter is not too upset about missing to see Mary Jane, and many Spider-Man fans will tell you that missing a lunch with Mary Jane isn't something Peter will casually ignore. Therefore, this scene can be seen as evidence of an episode that was in development before episodes 3 and 5, which both feature Mary Jane. But due to the circumstances of the time, this episode was aired later after Mary Jane was already established. To close off my critiques, Sting of the Scorpion is a cleverly written episode that managed to mostly avoid the mistakes that the previous episodes have. We get great character development, 2 solid action scenes, and an episode that successfully attempted to do more than the original source material. And now we reach to my favorite part of my Spider-Blood videos, the source material. This episode is an adaptation of Amazing Spider-Man number 20, which marks the first appearance of the Scorpion in the comics. The show follows the same setup from the issue with the tailing of Peter, Spider-Man's first fight with Scorpion, and ending with a climactic battle between Spidey and Scorpion with Jameson in the crosshairs. But that's where the similarities end, as the comic and episode stray significantly. There are an abundance of changes from the original story, so I'll only go through the ones that are relevant to the episode. First, comic book Matt Gargan is not characterized as a dullard, but as a generic tough guy who's willing to do anything for a price. Second, both stories have the character Dr. Stillman, who is the scientist that transformed Gargan to Scorpion. However, the comic gave him a major supporting role, whilst the cartoon adaptation was reduced to a minor character. Third, Scorpion's deteriorating mind was a plot element in the original comic, but the show described this phenomena as Scorpion becoming more primal, rather than plainly stating he is turning evil.
Stillwell, do something! Gargan's going berserk!
I know. The genetic realignment is making him mentally unstable. Professor Connors was right. Neogenics is too experimental, too dangerous to use on a human being.
As a result, Gargan's transformation was written more sympathetically compared to his comic counterpart. Cartoon Scorpion was losing his mind and tries whatever he can to retain what humanity he has left. On the other hand, comic Scorpion fully embraces his transformation and starts indulging in his malice actions.
If nobody can beat him so easy, then nobody can stop me. The whole city is mine for the taking.
Shockingly, there is one moment in the episode that mimics almost entirely what happened in the comic. In the initial confrontation between Spider-Man and Scorpion, the show mimicked almost entirely how the fight went down in the comic, to the point that they animated Scorpion's surprise attack exactly how it was drawn, and both fights end with Spider-Man being tossed into a water tower. It's honestly cool that the storyboard artists are taking direct inspiration from the original comic. Speaking of inspiration, remember how I said that it was a great revelation upon learning of Jameson's tragedy? Well, you see, Jameson's backstory on its own is not what made it to be one of the greatest revelations I've witnessed. I know I am sounding contradictory, but allow me to explain. In my process of gathering all my notes and information about this episode, I came across an astonishing discovery about J. Jonah Jameson. In the flashback scene of Jameson's wife, we learned that her death was caused by a hitman who was hired by a mob boss that Jonah was about to expose. Since that moment was not in the original Amazing Spider-Man comics, I started searching for when the main comic book series established this backstory for Jonah. And to my surprise, prior to this episode, no Spider-Man comic ever established how Jameson's wife died. The only info I could find that predates this episode is that in Amazing Spider-Man number 190, the issue establishes that Jameson is a widower, but her cause of death is not elaborated. It wouldn't be till after this episode was aired that the Spider-Man comics would implement the mob hitman story into Jameson's history. Specifically, readers would get to learn about Jameson's wife in two different comics, Marvel Holiday Special 2004 and Spider-Man's Tangled Web number 20. The Holiday Special comic makes Jonah go through his own Christmas Carol type story, and Tangled Webs gives us insight of how Jonah was in his younger years and the time period of him dating his soon-to-be wife. As an aside, I recommend reading both comics. They have fun and exciteful stories to tell, and having Jonah in the lead always leads to an entertaining story. You can find both comics at an extremely affordable price digitally, or you can contact your local comic shop to see if they have it in stock. I stated this before in the Dr. Octopus episode, but it is shocking how influential this series had on the Spider-Man mythos. I took for granted that Jameson's backstory was something that was always established within the original comic continuity, but researching this episode proved me wrong. All credit goes to the showrunners for not only adapting these iconic characters wonderfully, but providing them with new ideas that would become established continuity in the mainline comics. Scorpion's debut episode avoids a lot of pitfalls that previous episodes fell into. The episode has minimal animation errors, no plot contrivances, no characters making stupid decisions, no rushed character arcs, and was able to improve a classic Spider-Man story. This marks the new standard that all future episodes will need to live up to. It succeeds in having all the essential elements that make an amazing Spider-Man story. Thank you for watching episode 6 of Spider-Blood. I do want to acknowledge that this episode was long overdue, and from now on I am going to refrain from making any promises in regards to timely releases. With that out of the way, if you enjoy the video, then you can support me by clicking the like button, putting your comments below, and subscribing to the hacjacshow. Your support in growing this channel will make sure more videos like this are uploaded more frequently. And if you're into gaming live streams, then check out my friend and co-host Jack on our Twitch channel, where you can see him play new and familiar games Monday through Friday. And finally, make sure to tune in for our weekly live show every Wednesday night. You can also follow us on Twitter and TikTok. Thank you for watching, and this is Hack, signing off.